It is indeed a very, very uplifting moment for me to come back here and join this very, very timely and important deliberation on the form of Muslim Democrats with Tan Sri, with Dato' Anwar Ibrahim. I don't know if you know it, Dato'. Way back when I became foreign minister and you were deputy prime minister and minister of finance here, many friends around the world call us the ASEAN of Anwar and Surin generation. I don't know if that was a compliment or that was an expression of concern that we would lead the region in a wrong direction. But Islam is a religion of peace, but everywhere Muslims are either the cause of conflict, the victims of violence, the victims of tensions and confrontation, or the parties to violent conflicts themselves. Here in Southeast Asia, one of the facts that may be difficult to swallow is that, be careful, listen to me carefully, where there are Muslim concentrations, there is poverty. In the form of minorities or in the form of majority. 600 million people of ASEAN, almost half are Muslims. 5 years as Secretary General of ASEAN until 2012, one of my concerns was, where would this half be when we go into the community next year under the chairmanship of Malaysia? Would it be the half that is equal to the other half? Or would it be a half that is slightly ahead of the other half? Or would it be a half that is left behind in the back of this process of competition here in this region? Coming from southern Thailand, being a member of the community of the Ummah, I'm not sure I'm confident that this half is going to be equal to others, more likely will be following others, and there will be a lot of frustration and a lot of implications on that very, very fact. So it is good that the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Mr. Hanyu, for you and other friends from other religious and civilizational communities to come here and witness our soul-searching activities here. I think we take pride in the fact that Islam is the religion that calls upon humanity to become witness unto the rest of creation. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We do not send you, Muhammad, except to be the blessing of all creation. And forever that is a challenge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every Muslim to live up to that injunction that thou shall be and shall live in order to share the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all His creation. But somehow along the way, we have lost sight of that very injunction. We have become rigid, we have become absolute, we have become very narrow. We take the truth or the way we see the truth as rigid, fundamental, exact, and there is no other way of looking at it. It's my way or there's no other way. But I don't think Islam was revealed so that it can be that certain and that absolute to the point where human beings do not have any space for his or her own ijtihad or interpretation. Because Allah said, I know what you know not. And from my childhood in the Pondok, sitting at the feet of the Guru of the Pondok, not reading the kitab, but massaging him. Because it was late in the evening, and that must have been his 10th kitab of the day, after Isha. Before turning out that kerosene lamp, I had to be there massaging him, my grandfather. And before that light was turned off, before he closed his kitab, he said always, Wallahu a'lam. He knows better, he knows best. What I told you, what I read with you, what I explained to you may be only 50% right, 50% wrong, or 70% wrong, or 30% right. Be humble. Be grateful, be humble, and be forever tolerant of others' opinions. My father became his first student after he came back from Makkah. And my father was forced to return to Petaling, to my hometown, because of the same reason, and that was the turmoil of the Second World War. And one evening after class, he walked around, and my father was one of the leaders of the talaqah, meaning teaching his own younger students. And he ventured into his own opinion, interpreting one of the ayats or one of the hadiths, I don't know. And my grandfather said, Ismail, you are wrong. And my father said, this is the way I see it. Because you told us to be experimental, you told us to be exploring, you told us to be forever making your own interpretation to the best of your knowledge. Because of that argument, my father became my grandfather's first son-in-law. And he was sent to Makkah himself. I'm telling you this story because I think for some reason we have lost that tradition of tolerance, that tradition of exercising our intellectual freedom. We became rigid and we became absolute in our own way. And that is an obstacle to life in an open and democratic society. A month ago, Brother Khalid, I went to pray at the Central Mosque in London. And I was wearing this pin. It's an Oxford pin. I was told by an ulama in the congregation, take your pin off. Allah does not want to know you as anybody else except as his servant. One of. I had no feeling about this pin because I live in a world of globalization with multiple identities. I took offense when someone like that told me to behave as a Muslim, because I thought I could hold my own on being a good Muslim. And this pin did not take away my faith. This pin did not diminish my loyalty to my Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it was felt incumbent upon that particular person to correct me. And we do that very often in our society. That either my way or you are wrong. Well, that is a problem. So I think the very first fundamental duty for Muslim Democrats, and this is a small d Democrat, big D would mean you belong to a party that calls itself Democrat Party, like myself, but I'm not that today. I am a small d Democrat. The first fundamental duty is to be tolerant and to be very, very humble, that you don't know the truth, that you don't own the truth, that there are others in the society that would need consultation with you, and you come up with certain conclusion about issues facing you as a Muslim Ummah. As foreign minister, I went to visit the Islamic Republic of Iran. I was conducted into the office of the president, Mr. The philosopher, what is his name? Muhammad Khatami. I asked him, knowing that he spent a few years in Germany, knowing that he was the imam, I think, in a masjid in Hamburg, but also studying Western philosophy. On top of his Islamic Shiite philosophy in Iran. And I asked him an Aristotelian question. I didn't tell him that it was an Aristotelian question, but he got it right away. I said, Mr. President, Excellency, suppose there were two Muslims. One lives in a closed society. He was a good Muslim, but he was forced to be good. He could not have any other alternatives. He had to pray because he was forced to pray. He had to fast because he was forced to fast. He had to behave in compliance with all the dictums of his society, of his ummah. The other one lives in an open society with all the choices that he has, but he chooses to perform all his rituals according to the requirement of his religion, which is a better Muslim. President Khatami was rather surprised to hear that from the Foreign Minister of Thailand. His cabinet was very surprised to hear, why don't you talk about export, import of oil? Why don't you talk about investment and tourism? I chose to ask that question, knowing that he was a philosopher. He was quiet for a few minutes, and he clapped his knees and laughed and laughed and laughed and said, you, Muslim from Southeast Asia, are better than many of us around here. He didn't say Iran, but he said many of us around here. Because that was an Aristotelian question. Aristotle said to be a good citizen, it depends on the regime. If you are in a monarchy, you have to be a certain type of citizen. If you are in a democracy, you have to be a certain type of a person. If you are in an aristocracy, you have to be a certain type of a person. He said, but if you are a good man, you are universally good. It doesn't depend on the kinds of regimes that you are in. The question before you, all aspiring Muslim Democrats, is this. Can we somehow make sure that a good Muslim, a good Muslimah, is the same as a good human being everywhere? That would certainly answer the question, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Because you are sent, O Muhammad, as a blessing to all creation, all mankind. But somehow we have been kept in this cocoon of our own self, our own whatever community. And we have become rigid. We have isolated ourselves. We tend to forget the fact that a good Muslim, good Muslimah will have to be good in the global setting of multiplicity, of pluralism. Cannot be good only among ourselves. Muslims will forever be living alongside other communities to eternity. So how do we come up with a structure, a system that would allow us to be good Muslim, good Muslimah universally? I think that's the question that we all have to ask and that we all have to answer. So we have to forever do the soul searching and forever live that mission that your religion is supposed to be a blessing for all mankind. Live it, share it, and show it with the rest of humanity. I don't know if you notice, whatever society, whatever country that called itself Islamic is in trouble. Gaddafi was asked when he was alive, what's the name of your country? He said, you want a long version or a short version? A long version would be, People's Republic, Arabic, Islamic of Libya. He said, but you want a short version? It's Libya. Think along. Pakistan is in trouble. I don't know if Iran is the manifestation of the Islamic states for the 21st century. I don't know. But Indonesia and Malaysia, struggling as you are, somehow you are reflecting the norms, the values, and the characters that would allow good Muslims to emerge and be good human beings in the global setting. We are forever being called upon to deliver that mission of being good, being engaged, being active, being part of the solutions, not always being part of the questions and the problems of humanity. I began with that sentence, Islam is a religion of peace, but everywhere Muslims are in the state of conflict, victims of violence, parties to tension or confrontations. That is Jean-Jacques Rousseau's phrase. If you read the social contract, the first sentence is, men are born free, but everywhere they are in chain. It's a contradiction, but a contradiction to evoke your questioning mind. So how to go about building a community, a structure that would allow us to really live the religion of peace, religion of compassion, religion of understanding. So, being a Muslim, being a Muslimah, it is always a challenge. In Thailand, I told my prime minister at that time, don't appoint me as your foreign minister, only as a decorative piece of your cabinet. If you want to appoint me to a job that you think I can do. And forever, as a small d Democrat, you have to live the values of Islam that I understand it to be. And that is to be confident but humble. To be always willing to engage, but also prepared to concede. To always be certain about your ideas, but open for conversation and open for change and transformation along the way. I don't think any of those Islamic states are now doing what I think is best. To use Islam as an inspiration. To move from imperfection to perfection along the way, democratic path, through consultation, through living in an open space, ready to debate, but also ready to accept new ideas, new ways of looking at things, and always ready to make a compromise, accept all those fundamental, cardinal principles of faith. Those are cardinal and fundamental, but there's a lot of room for us to work with each other, to live with each other, to share with each other, and to always aspire to perfect your society, your community, your state, your country into the future. I think another challenge for many of us is the issue of tolerance and patience for the diversity of ways in which 1,500 million Muslims around the world see things and interpret things. We don't have the patience to wait out. We don't have the tolerance to endure. Oftentimes, we take the matters in our own hands. and be autocrats deciding for others. So the rule of law has become less important to us, and many of us, than the fact that I have the power, I have the authority, I am the judge of everything. That is certainly not what a Muslim democrat should do and should behave. So if we want to really construct a Muslim democratic society, we need to go back and examine the ethos of Islamic democracy. And these are some of the elements that we have to go through. And that is, we cannot be the only one who is correct. And that we have to open up to others, and that we have to tolerate others, and then we have to have patience to endure the difficulties with others. I think what I've been saying is exemplified by Dato' Anwar Ibrahim. That willing to endure, willing to go through the test, the bala, but always mindful and committed to the fact that I am right, but I can't convince others to believe the way I see it. It has to be upheld, to be proven, and to be examined through the process. In the end, inshallah, the truth will prevail. So, 21st century is here with us. Half of ASEAN will be Muslims. Going to the community next year. We have to think about how to live together with others. 5.5 billion more on this surface of the earth. Together, 7 billion. Muslims are 1.5. Strategic places. ASEAN is astride or situated on the crossroads of shipping lanes, east to west. East Asia, China, Japan, Korea would be in trouble if this region is in turmoil. If the issues of the Rohingyas in Malaysia, in Myanmar, is not resolved, the Straits of Malacca could be under pressure. Strategically, security. Could be the eastern waters of Somalia. So you know the implications. You know the strategic implications of this particular region, of this particular 300 million people. So we are either parts of the solution to the problem, or we become parts of the problems forever. And I think the challenge is before us. How individually we can take that mission to heart. That we shall live, we shall share, we shall cooperate in order to make sure that this space is more equal, this space is more free, this space is more stable, this space is more transparent, this space, Southeast Asia, ASEAN, is more cooperative among each other, so that we can construct a community that shines and lives the norms and the values and the aspirations of the very religion that was revealed as the blessing for all mankind. Up to this point, we see a lot of upheaval around the world, a lot of them, where Muslims live. Last night, Brother Anwar quoted Muhammad Iqbal. Let me go back a few centuries further to quote Jalaluddin ar-Rumi, who lived in the era of tremendous turmoil and change and transformation himself. But he had the audacity to come up with the different ways of looking at things, with different kinds of ideas and suggestions, and he said, with the turmoil of the landscape, Turkey included at that time, but Persia, India, the Arab land, the turmoil that he witnessed, the violence that he witnessed. And he said, merchants of all goods are gone. Goods here means ideas. Goods here means way of doing things, way of looking at things, way of interpreting things. Merchants of all goods are gone. We are the new vendors, he said. His generation, the intellectuals of his generation, are the new generation of merchants of ideas. Create ideas. Come up with new ideas. Do your own ijtihad. Exert yourself. Interpret. Come up with new answers to new problems or to even old problems. We are the new vendors. And he said, this is the Middle East at that time, the Islamic land at that time. This is our bazaar. I would like to invite and to call upon all of you, as we are doing our soul searching, as our friends from outside the community are part and witnessing this process, this ritual of soul searching, I would like to invite all of you to adopt that attitude of Jalaluddin ar-Rumi, that we need a new beginning, that we need a new interpretation, that we need to come up with solutions rather than forever being part of the problems. This is our bazaar. This is the marketplace that we are being tested, whether we can produce new merchandise, new ideas, because the world is forever transforming, because the world is forever changing. We have to keep up with it in the spirit of that rahmatan lil alameen. Otherwise, we will not live up to the promise that thou art the witness to all mankind. Shuhada ala nas. And that is the supreme responsibility of every human being, of every Muslimah, of every Muslim, and certainly of every Muslim and Muslimah, small d, Democrat. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.